Welcome to Revenge Secret Stories. I share gripping true tales of betrayal, heartbreak, and family strife, exploring hidden resentments and shocking deceits. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly videos that reveal mysteries and truths. Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Let's dive in. The air in the dining room felt heavy, as if the chandelier above us was dripping shadows instead of light. Kevin's laughter sliced through the tension sharp and deliberate as he raised his wine glass toward me. To Jennifer, he said, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't name, something that wasn't love. My masterpiece. But now I have two of you. He paused, his smile curling like smoke. Guess which one's the upgraded model? The words hit me like a slap, but it was Carla's presence across the table that made my blood run cold. She sat there, her face a mirror of mine. Same high cheekbones, same delicate nose, same hazel eyes that seemed to catch the light just so. But her smile was too perfect, her posture too polished, as if she'd been sculpted to outshine me. Kevin's mistress, his surgical creation, wasn't just a lover. She was me, but better. Or so he thought. The other guests laughed, assuming it was a cruel joke. But I saw the truth in Kevin's gaze. He was rewriting my existence. I clutched my fork, the metal biting into my palm, grounding me against the surreal horror of it all. You don't mean that I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. Kevin's smirk widened, and he leaned back, swirling his wine. Oh, Jennifer, you're always so serious. Don't worry, I'll never miss you when you're out of town. His words lingered, a veiled threat wrapped in charm, and Carla's eyes flickered toward me, not with triumph, but with something else, fear maybe, or a plea. That night, I lay awake, the memory of Carla's face haunting me. It wasn't just resemblance. It was precision, as if Kevin had carved my essence into her skin. The thought made my stomach churn, but beneath the betrayal, something stirred a spark ancient and fierce, like a forgotten ember in my soul. I didn't know it then, but it was the first whisper of the power I'd soon unleash. The next morning, the school's fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of insects as I stepped into Mrs. Patterson's classroom. Janet's teacher closed the door behind me, her face pale, her hands fidgeting with a stack of papers. Mrs. Walsh, she said, her voice low, as if afraid the walls might hear. I'm confused about something. Yesterday, a woman picked up Janet early for a dentist appointment. She looked exactly like you. The room tilted, the cheerful alphabet border on the walls, warping into a mocking blur. What do you mean, exactly like me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mrs. Patterson's eyes darted to the door, then back to me. Same face, same hair, same voice. She knew Janet's middle name, her favorite snacks, even the story about her loose tooth. I assumed it was you. My knees buckled, and I gripped the back of a tiny plastic chair, its edges digging into my palms. The air felt thick, charged with an unnatural energy, as if the room itself held secrets it couldn't wait to spill. What dentist appointment? I managed, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the hum of the lights. Mrs. Patterson pulled out her attendance log, her finger trembling as it traced yesterday's entry. She said it was an emergency. Janet seemed comfortable with her, but... She hesitated, studying my face with growing concern. She kept looking back at the school entrance like she was waiting for someone else. When I asked if everything was okay, Janet said, "This is my other mommy." The words pierced me, sharp and cold, like a blade forged from my own fears. My daughter, my Janet, calling another woman mommy. I forced myself to breathe, but the air tasted wrong, tinged with something metallic, like blood or magic. Did she call her that willingly? I asked, terrified of the answer. Mrs. Patterson shifted uncomfortably. It was strange, Mrs. Walsh. Janet seemed confused, not scared, but uncertain. She kept glancing around as if she thought you might appear. She said, "My other mommy knows my stories, but she doesn't feel the same." The classroom walls seemed to pulse the colors, too bright, the air, too heavy. I looked at Janet's empty desk, her purple pencil case sitting untouched next to a drawing she'd left behind. I picked it up with trembling hands. Stick figures a little girl standing between two identical women, both labeled Mommy in Janet's careful handwriting. One had a sad face, the other a smiling one, but the smiling figure's eyes were drawn as empty circles, hollow and wrong. A chill ran through me, not just from fear, but from something deeper, a primal instinct telling me this wasn't just betrayal. It was something darker, something that bent the edges of reality. I drove home in a daze, the world outside my car blurring into streaks of gray and green. Kevin's late nights at the office, his medical conference expenses the way he'd been photographing my face obsessively for years, claiming it was for his portfolio. They all clicked into place like pieces of a cursed puzzle. But there was something else, something I couldn't name. The air around me felt alive, whispering warnings I couldn't quite hear. At home, I stood in front of the mirror staring at the face Kevin had spent years perfecting. The cheekbones, he'd sculpted the nose, he'd refined the lips he'd filled to make me proportional. I'd thought it was love, his desire to make me beautiful. Now I saw it for what it was, a blueprint for replacement. But as I traced my reflection, my fingers tingled, and for a moment my eyes glowed, not with light, but with something ancient, something that had been buried inside me, waiting. That afternoon, I called Kevin's office, my voice shaking but firm. "This is Jennifer Walsh. Is my husband available?" The receptionist's cheerful tone grated against my nerves. "Oh, Mrs. Walsh, you just missed him. He left with Carla for their afternoon appointments. Should I have him call you back?" Their appointments. As if Carla was his partner, his equal, while I was just the discarded prototype. I hung up without responding my reflection, staring back at me from the rearview mirror. The woman looking back wasn't just Jennifer Walsh, the betrayed wife. She was something more, something Kevin hadn't accounted for. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Running late tonight. Don't wait up." But I knew he wasn't working. He was living his new life with his new creation, the woman he'd molded to erase me. That night, I tucked Janet into bed, her small body curled against me as she whispered about her day. "Mommy," she said, her voice barely audible. "Miss Carla smells like medicine, not like you. She knows my stories, but she tells them wrong." Her words were a lifeline proof that our bond hadn't been severed. But then she added, "Daddy says she makes him happier. Does that mean you have to go away?" My heart shattered, but that same ember inside me flared brighter, hotter. "No, baby," I said, smoothing her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." As I sang her favorite lullaby, her breathing softened into sleep, but the room felt different, charged, as if invisible eyes were watching. I glanced at the window, half expecting to see Carla's face staring back, but there was only darkness. Yet the darkness seemed to whisper, urging me to act, to unearth the truth. I crept downstairs to Kevin's home office, a room he'd always kept locked his sacred space for patient files and surgical plans. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound unnaturally loud in the silent house. My fingers brushed the handle, and a jolt ran through me like static, but deeper, as if the house itself recognized my intent. Kevin's snoring echoed from upstairs, steady and oblivious, but I felt something else, a presence not human guiding my steps. His computer glowed in the darkness, the password screen a silent challenge. I tried our anniversary, Janet's birthday, nothing. Then I remembered the date he'd once mentioned with pride, his first successful facial reconstruction surgery. The screen unlocked and my breath caught as folder names appeared: Jennifer Original Template, Carla version 2.0 Future Projects. My hands trembled as I clicked the first folder. Photos of my face filled the screen. Clinical cold measured from every angle like a map of my identity. Notes accompanied each image. Subtle nose refinement 2018, cheek implants 2020, lip fillers for proportionality. My life, my face reduced to a surgeon's experiment. But it was the Carla version 2.0 folder that stopped my heart. Photos showed a woman with plain features, kind eyes, nothing like me until the transformation began. Kevin's notes detailed every procedure, nose reshaped to match template, cheekbones enhanced for superior symmetry, voice coaching to replicate original pitch, and then a chilling phrase: behavioral modification progressing. Patient shows promising compliance. The room spun, and the air grew thick, pressing against my skin. I wasn't just being replaced, I was being erased, my identity stolen and grafted onto another. But as panic clawed at me, that ember inside flared again, and for a moment the screen flickered as if my rage had disrupted its circuits. I saved the files to a flash drive, my hands steady, despite the chaos in my mind. Kevin thought he'd crafted the perfect plan, but he didn't know the power stirring within me, a power I didn't yet understand but could feel like a storm gathering strength. As I slipped out of the office, the house seemed to hum its walls, alive with secrets. I glanced at the family photos on the mantel, smiling faces, happy moments, but now I wondered which ones showed me and which showed her. The thought made my skin crawl, but it also ignited something fierce. Kevin could copy my face, but he couldn't touch my soul, my bond with Janet, or the fire growing inside me. I stood in the driveway staring at the house we'd built together and made a vow under the starless sky. Kevin thought he'd created an upgrade, a flawless replacement to erase me from existence. But he'd awakened something he couldn't control: a mother's love, a woman's wrath, and a power older than his scalpels. I didn't know how yet, but I would become someone he'd never recognize, someone who'd tear his perfect world apart. The night air whispered back as if the universe itself was listening, and I felt the first stirrings of a plan, a dangerous, impossible plan that would change everything. The night was a living thing, pressing against the windows of our house, its silence heavy with secrets. I stood in the kitchen, the cold coffee in my mug trembling in my hands. Kevin's files burned into my memory like a curse. The photos of my face measured, annotated, reduced to a surgeon's blueprint haunted me. But it was Janet's drawing that clawed at my heart. Two identical women, one with a sad face, the other with hollow eyes, and a little girl caught between them. My daughter was slipping away, her world warped by Kevin's lies, and yet the ember inside me burned hotter, a primal force whispering that I could fight back. The air shimmered faintly as if the house itself was watching, waiting for me to act. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning, every shadow a glimpse of the mysterious presence I'd sensed in Kevin's office. The Shadow Lady, as Janet had called her, was no mere figment, she was real, her hum vibrating in my bones, urging me to uncover the truth before it was too late. I needed answers, not just about Carla's transformation, but about what Kevin was truly planning. His words at the dinner, an upgraded model, echoed like a taunt, but there was something darker beneath them, something that felt less human, more like a ritual. The next morning, I returned to Janet's school, the air thick with a mist that clung to my skin like a second shadow. Mrs. Patterson met me in her classroom. Her face pale, her hands clutching a stack of papers, as if they could shield her from what she'd seen. The fluorescent lights buzzed erratically, casting fleeting patterns on the walls, like runes from a forgotten language. "Mrs. Walsh," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's more you need to know about the woman who took Janet." My heart stuttered, but I kept my expression calm, the ember inside me steadying my nerves. Tell me. I said, my voice low, as if the room itself might betray us. Mrs. Patterson hesitated, her eyes darting to the door, then handed me a photocopy of a driver's license. It was my name, my address, my birth date, but the face was Carla's. Her eyes too sharp, too empty a mockery of mine. She had this, Mrs. Patterson said. She knew everything about Janet, her favorite books, her allergies, the way she ties her shoes. But it wasn't just that. She moved like you spoke like you. It was unnatural. The words sent a chill through me, and the air pulsed, the lights flickering as if in agreement. I stared at the license, my fingers tingling where they touched the paper, as if it carried a charge. What did Janet say about her? I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay composed. Mrs. Patterson's gaze dropped to the floor. She called her my other mommy, but she was confused, almost scared. She said, she knows my stories, but she doesn't feel right. And then, she paused, her voice breaking. She said the woman told her you were sick, that she was here to take your place until you were fixed. The room spun the walls, seeming to lean closer, their shadows coiling like smoke. Fixed. As if I were a broken doll, a flawed prototype to be discarded. The ember inside me flared, and for a moment I saw her, the shadow lady, standing in the corner, her form flickering, her eyes glowing with the same fire I felt. She didn't speak, but her presence was a command. Find the truth. I clutched Janet's latest drawing, tucked into the folder Mrs. Patterson had given me. It showed the same two women, but now the sad-faced mommy had a faint glow around her, like a halo of flame. And in the background, a shadowy figure held a book, its pages shimmering with unreadable symbols. Has Janet mentioned anyone else? I asked, my voice steadying as the shadow lady's strength flowed through me. Mrs. Patterson nodded. She talks about a shadow lady. In her dreams, someone who tells her to be strong, that her real mommy is fighting for her. I thought it was just a child's imagination, but she trailed off, her eyes meeting mine, filled with unease. The air hummed, and I felt the shadow lady's presence intensify, her whisper clear. She sees me too. My heart surged. Janet was reaching out, her faith in me, a lifeline across the chasm Kevin had built. I thanked Mrs. Patterson and left the drawing burning in my hand, a promise that I wasn't alone in this fight. That night, I waited until Kevin's snoring echoed through the house before slipping back into his office. The door creaked open, and the air inside was cold, thick, with an energy that made my skin prickle. The computer screen glowed like a portal, its light casting shadows that danced like specters. I entered the password, his first successful surgery, and the folders reappeared. Jennifer Original Template, Carla Version, 2.0 Future Projects, Enhancement Timeline. But there was a new file one I hadn't seen before, Legacy Protocols. The name sent a shiver down my spine, and the shadow lady's hum grew louder, urging me to open it. The Jennifer Original Template folder was a violation in itself. Hundreds of photos of my face taken over years each, with notes dissecting my features. Nose refined, 2018. Cheek implants for symmetry, 2020. I'd thought these surgeries were acts of love, Kevin's way of making me feel beautiful. Now I saw them as experiments, a map, to create his perfect replacement. The Carla version 2.0 folder was worse images of a woman with kind eyes and plain features transformed step by step into my likeness. Kevin's notes were clinical chilling facial reconstruction complete 2024. Voice modulation in progress. Behavioral conditioning shows 80% compliance. Behavioral conditioning. The phrase twisted in my gut, and the room seemed to darken, the shadows pooling in the corners like ink. I clicked on Jennifer Replacement Protocol, and my breath caught. It was a timeline, meticulous and cruel, document erratic behavior, February 2026. Initiate custody proceedings, April 2026. Complete transition to Carla, December 2026. Each entry was a step to erase me, to convince the world I was unfit, unstable, gone. But it was the Legacy Protocols file that stopped my heart. A single image loaded a sketch of a woman's face, neither mine nor Carla's, with glowing eyes, and a serene smile like a goddess from a forgotten myth. Below it, Kevin's handwriting. The legacy requires permanence. The vessel must be flawless. The screen flickered and the air grew colder, the hum now a low growl. Vessel permanence. The words felt like a spell, not a surgical plan, and I wondered what Kevin was truly chasing, something beyond control, something that twisted the edges of reality. The Shadow Lady's presence surged her whisper. Sharp. He seeks what he cannot have. I saved the files to my flash drive, my hands steady, despite the chaos in my mind. As I closed the computer, the screen glitched, displaying a single phrase. The legacy is a lie. I froze, my heart pounding. Was it the Shadow Lady breaking through Kevin's digital fortress, or something else entirely? The next day, I met Mrs. Patterson again, drawn back to the school by an instinct I couldn't name. The playground was empty, the swing swaying as if moved by unseen hands. She handed me a new drawing from Janet, her face etched with worry. She's been quieter, she said. But she keeps drawing this. The image showed the glowing real mommy, standing tall, flames rising around her, while the other mommy faded into shadow. The Shadow Lady stood beside them. Her book opened its pages, glowing with symbols that seemed to pulse. Below, Janet had written, "Mommy's coming." She's stronger now. Tears burned my eyes, but the ember inside me roared, fueled by Janet's faith. The air shimmered, and I saw the Shadow Lady in the classroom's window, her form clearer, her eyes mirroring mine. Thank you, I whispered to her, to Janet, to the force binding us. I tucked the drawing into my bag, a talisman of our bond, and vowed to unravel Kevin's legacy before it could touch my daughter. That evening, Kevin came home, his smile a mask that didn't reach his eyes. Long day, he said, pouring a glass of wine, his movements too precise, too controlled. Carla's been a lifesaver with Janet. His words were a test, and I felt the Shadow Lady's hum urging me to stay silent, to wait. I'm glad Janet's happy, I said, my voice soft, but laced with steel. He didn't notice, but the air pulsed, and I knew the storm was coming. The decision to vanish came like a lightning strike, sudden and searing, born from the ashes of Kevin's betrayal. I stood in our driveway, the house looming behind me, like a mausoleum of my former life, its windows dark but watchful. The Shadow Lady's whisper still echoed in my ears. You're enough, and the ember inside me burned brighter no longer. A spark, but a flame that refused to be snuffed out. Kevin thought he could erase me, replace me with his perfect creation. Carla. He thought he could steal my daughter, my identity, my soul. But he didn't know the power I was beginning to feel, a force older than his scalpels, deeper than his lies. I would become someone he'd never recognize, someone who could destroy him. The next morning, I drove to St. Mary's Community Center, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The support group Rebecca Martinez had told me about met in the basement, a hidden sanctuary for women whose lives had been shattered by men like Kevin. The air was thick with the scent of old coffee and unspoken pain, and as I sat in the circle of metal folding chairs, I felt the weight of every story wives discarded, mothers, erased identities, stolen. Rebecca's words lingered from our conversation the day before Dr. Okafor can make you disappear. But it's not just about running. It's about becoming someone they can't touch. Her eyes had held a fire. I recognized the same one burning in me. She'd given me an address in the warehouse district, a place that didn't exist on any map I could find. As I left the meeting, her warning echoed, Be sure, Jennifer. Once you start, there's no going back. I was sure. For Janet, for myself, for the woman I was meant to be, before Kevin reshaped me into his vision, I would do anything. The warehouse district was a labyrinth of rusted metal and forgotten dreams, the kind of place where shadows seemed to move on their own. The building at the address Rebecca gave me looked abandoned, its windows painted black, its door unmarked. I checked the slip of paper 3 times, my pulse racing before pushing the door open. A gentle chime rang out incongruous with the desolate exterior, and I stepped into a space that felt like a temple disguised as a medical spa. Soft lighting bathed the room in gold classical music, wove through the air, and the faint scent of lavender mingled with something sharper, ozone, like the air before a storm. "You must be Jennifer," a voice said, smooth and resonant, pulling me from my thoughts. A woman emerged from behind an ornate reception desk, her presence commanding yet gentle. She was stunning, her high cheekbones hinting at African heritage, her silver-streaked hair pulled into an elegant chignon. Her eyes held a depth that seemed to see through me into the fire I was only beginning to understand. "I'm Dr. Amara Okafor," she said, her smile both welcoming and steely. "Rebecca said you might need our services." She led me down a hallway lined with photographs that stole my breath. Before and after images, but not the kind peddled in glossy magazines. These were transformations of identity, of essence. A blonde soccer mom reborn as a dark-haired executive with a sharper jawline. A petite redhead, now a tall brunette with a face that radiated authority. Each photo bore a name and a year stretching back over a decade, and the air around them shimmered faintly as if the images themselves held power. These women didn't want beauty, Dr. Okafor said, noticing my fascination. They wanted freedom, from husbands who saw them as objects to be molded from systems that protected their abusers. Some faced death threats. Others, like you, fought men who thought they could rewrite their existence. Her voice carried a weight as if she'd seen too many stories like mine, yet her eyes burned with purpose. "Rebecca told me about your husband's project, creating a duplicate to replace you. It's not the first time I've seen this." She opened a thick folder revealing case studies that chilled me. A plastic surgeon in Dallas who crafted 3 versions of his perfect wife, each discarded when she failed to meet his standards. A dermatologist in Seattle who turned patients into variations of his lost love, using his practice as a laboratory for obsession. The medical world shields its own Dr. Okafor, said, her tone sharp. They use credentials to silence their victims, to turn love into madness, truth into delusion. But we rewrite the story. She led me to her office, a sanctuary that blended medical precision with something almost mystical. Diplomas from Johns Hopkins and Harvard hung beside certificates from organizations with cryptic names. The Veil Network Sisters of the Unseen. The air hummed, and I felt that same presence from Kevin's office, the Shadow Lady's whisper, urging me forward. "Doctor." Okafor opened a leather-bound album showing me women who'd vanished and returned as warriors, social workers, advocates, lawyers, their new identities forged in fire. "The transformation takes 6 months, she said. "Not just your face, but your identity documents, credentials, a life no one can trace. You'll become someone your husband can't touch, someone who can fight from within the system he thinks he controls." I thought of Janet, her frightened eyes, her drawings of a glowing real mommy. "What about my daughter?" I asked, my voice breaking. Dr. Okafor's expression softened, but her resolve didn't waver. She showed me reunion photos, mothers embracing children they hadn't seen in months, their new faces radiant with love. "The separation is the hardest part," she admitted. 8 to 12 months to heal, to build your new life, to position yourself to strike. But when you return, you'll have the power to protect her, The cost was staggering $200,000 for the transformation and new identity. But I thought of my grandmother's jewelry, my parents' life insurance, a savings account Kevin didn't know about. Assets he'd never suspected, because he saw me as a canvas, not a woman with her own plans. What if I do this? I asked, my voice steady, despite the ache in my chest. Dr. Okafor's smile was like a blade, sharp and sure. Then you become someone your husband never saw coming. Someone with the strength to unravel his lies and save your daughter. Someone who was always inside you waiting to be unleashed. She handed me a business card with only a phone number, the paper warm against my fingers as if infused with energy. Think about it. But know this: playing his game means losing. Changing the rules means you win. 3 days later, I stood outside Janet's school watching Kevin's Mercedes pull into the pickup line. Janet climbed into the car, her small frame hunched, her eyes searching the crowd for me. The sight tore at my heart, but the Shadow Lady's whisper echoed, "Be strong." For her. I dialed Dr. Okafor's number, my hands shaking. "I want to disappear," I said when she answered. "Then let's make it happen," she replied, her voice a lifeline. "Be here tomorrow at 600 a.m. We move quickly before your husband suspects you're anything but defeated." The next morning, I drove to the warehouse district, under a sky heavy with clouds, the air crackling with unseen energy. Kevin thought I was at a therapy session with Dr. Chin, the psychiatrist he'd chosen to label me unstable. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he planned to bury me in his narrative of madness, I was stepping into a new reality, one he couldn't control. Dr. Okafor greeted me at the clinic, her presence grounding yet electric, as if she carried the storm within her. "We begin with documentation," she said, leading me to a consultation room where advanced 3D imaging cameras weighted their lenses glinting like eyes. "We'll map your current appearance, then design your new identity based on genetic possibilities, what you might have been in another life, another world." The cameras whirred, capturing my face from every angle, and the screens displayed options. Subtle shifts that made me unrecognizable, yet familiar, or radical transformations that erased Jennifer Walsh entirely. As the software generated potential faces, the air shimmered and I caught a glimpse of the Shadow Lady in the reflection of a monitor, her glowing eyes meeting mine. "Choose power," she seemed to say, and I felt the ember inside me flare, guiding my choice. I selected a transformation that felt like a rebirth, darker skin, suggesting Latin heritage, a stronger jawline, radiating authority eyes that held fire instead of fear. "This isn't cosmetic, Doctor," Okafor said, pointing to the screen. "Bone restructuring, melanin therapy, vocal cord modification. These are survival tools. The first surgery was scheduled for the following Tuesday." "You'll stay here during recovery," Dr. Okafor explained. "We'll use a mental health retreat cover story, complete with forged documentation to satisfy Kevin's legal team." The room pulsed, the air alive with possibility, and I nodded, feeling the Shadow Lady's presence beside me, her whisper now a steady hum. "You are becoming." The first surgery was a baptism in pain and purpose. I woke in a private recovery room, bandages covering half my face, my mouth too swollen to speak. Dr. Okafor checked on me, her touch gentle but precise. "Cheekbone augmentation and jawline reconstruction," she said, showing me surgical photos. "When the swelling fades, you'll have a face that commands respect, not pity." The pain was excruciating, but beneath it, I felt the ember burning brighter, as if the surgery was carving away Kevin's influence and revealing the woman I was meant to be. Elena Rodriguez, my identity coach, arrived in the second week, her southwestern accent warm but firm. A former actress who'd escaped an abusive director, she radiated the same fierce energy I was beginning to claim. Voice training starts when your throat heals, she said, demonstrating the confident cadence I'd adopt as Maria Gonzalez. But first we work on presence. Kevin taught you to shrink to apologize for existing. Maria Gonzalez takes up space. We practiced posture gestures the way I carried myself. Each movement felt like shedding a skin Kevin had forced on me. The mirror in my recovery room showed a stranger swollen, bandaged, but strong. And sometimes in the dim light, I saw her, the shadow lady, standing behind me, her form flickering like a flame. She never spoke, but her presence was a promise I was not alone. The melanin therapy came in the third month, a series of injections that darkened my skin to a warm bronze. This is permanent, Dr. Okafor warned. You're committing to a new heritage, a new story. I watched my reflection change my pale Irish complexion, giving way to something vibrant, powerful. Combined with my new bone structure, I looked like someone born to lead, not to follow. The shadow lady appeared again, her eyes glowing in the mirror, and I swore she nodded as if approving my choice. Elena's voice training was relentless. Your old voice was soft, uncertain, because Kevin wanted you small, she said. Maria speaks from her core with authority. The vocal cord surgery in month 4 was performed under local anesthesia, and when I spoke, the sound was rich, resonant, like a bell ringing clear. How do you feel? Dr. Okafor asked. Unbreakable, I said, and the word vibrated in my chest, a truth I'd never known before. The shadow lady's presence grew stronger, her whispers now a chorus. You are ready. Between surgeries, I studied social work, textbooks with a hunger I hadn't felt since college, child psychology, family systems, custody law knowledge that armed me against Kevin's manipulations. I learned the language of his crimes, parental alienation, psychological abuse, medical fraud. Each page felt like a weapon, and the ember inside me burned hotter, as if fueled by the truth. Dr. Okafor arranged mock interviews, teaching me to suppress my maternal instincts when discussing Janet's case. Maria Gonzalez doesn't love Janet Walsh, she coached. She protects all children from harm. The exercises were torture, but they sharpened my focus, turning my pain into precision. In the quiet moments, I felt the shadow lady's presence, her energy weaving through my studies, as if she were guiding my hand across the pages. By the 5th month, I was practicing life as Maria Gonzalez. I wore structured blazers instead of Kevin's preferred cardigan's heels that made me stand tall colors that demanded attention. My new voice carried weight. My posture exuded confidence. The mirror showed a woman Kevin would never recognize, but in my dreams, Janet's face appeared, her drawings glowing with that same shimmering aura. Mommy's not broken, she'd said, and I clung to her faith, knowing I was becoming the warrior she needed. On the final day, Dr. Okafor presented my new identity, Maria Gonzalez master's degree in social work from Arizona State University, 3 years of experience with Phoenix Family Services, references from colleagues who were part of her underground network. Your backstory explains your expertise in professional manipulation, she said. You're ready to infiltrate the system Kevin thinks he owns. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time as Jennifer Walsh. The woman staring back had dark skin-sharp cheekbones and eyes that burned with purpose. The shadow lady stood behind me, her form clearer now, her eyes mirroring mine. Kevin destroyed Jennifer Walsh, I told my reflection, but he created something far more dangerous. As I left the clinic, the air crackled, and the shadow lady's whisper followed me. You are the storm. I stepped into the world as Maria Gonzalez, carrying credentials that would open doors Kevin couldn't close. The war was coming, and I was ready to strike. The CPS office smelled of stale coffee and bureaucracy, a stark contrast to the electric pulse in my veins as I stepped into my new life as Maria Gonzalez. My reflection in the glass door was unrecognizable. Bronze skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes that burned with purpose. The transformation was complete, but the Shadow Lady's presence lingered, her whisper, a constant companion. You are the storm. I carried her strength, my daughter's faith, and a flash drive filled with Kevin's damning files, each one a step toward dismantling his lies. I wasn't Jennifer Walsh anymore, the wife he'd sculpted and discarded. I was Maria, a force he couldn't predict, and I was here to take back my daughter. My first day at CPS was a trial by fire. The director, Ms. Clara Hensley, a woman with a no-nonsense bob and a gaze that could cut glass, handed me a stack of case files. Gonzalez, you're new, but your resume from Phoenix Family Services speaks for itself. She said, her tone clipped but approving. We're short-staffed, so you're taking point on a high-priority case. Janet Walsh, age 6. Allegations of parental instability. Fathers pushing for sole custody. The name hit me like a punch, but I kept my face neutral, my voice steady, with the cadence Elena had drilled into me. Understood. I'll review the file and schedule a home visit. Clara nodded, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. Janet's case file was thick, filled with Kevin's carefully crafted lies. Reports of my erratic behavior, forged therapy notes from Dr. Chin, even a police report claiming I'd neglected Janet during a mental health episode. Each page was a betrayal, but the Shadow Lady's hum steadied me, her presence flickering in the office's fluorescent lights. He underestimates you. Use it. I left the office with Janet's file under my arm, the weight of it both a burden and a weapon. The air outside crackled as if the city itself sensed my intent. I drove to Kevin's house, our house once now a stage for his twisted play. The neighborhood felt different through Maria's eyes, the manicured lawns and quiet streets hiding secrets only I could see. As I parked, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror, and for a split second the Shadow Lady's face overlaid mine, her glowing eyes urging me forward. I stepped out my heels, clicking with authority, my new identity a shield and a sword. The home visit was my first chance to see Janet since my transformation. My heart pounded as I rang the doorbell, the sound echoing like a heartbeat in the silent house. Kevin answered, his smile polished, but his eyes cold, scanning me like a predator assessing prey. Ms. Gonzalez, CPS, he said, his tone dripping with charm. Come in. We're eager to cooperate. He didn't recognize me. Not a flicker of doubt crossed his face, and the realization both thrilled and sickened me. I followed him inside my posture, straight, my voice calm but commanding. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. I'm here to assess Janet's living situation and interview all parties involved. The house smelled of antiseptic, and lies a sterile mockery of the home we'd built. Carla stood in the living room, her face, my face frozen in a nervous smile. Her eyes darted to Kevin, then back to me, and I saw it again, that flicker of fear I'd noticed at the dinner months ago. She wasn't just his creation, she was his prisoner. Janet sat on the couch, clutching a stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide and searching. My heart ached to scoop her up to tell her I was her mother, but Maria Gonzalez didn't know Janet Walsh. I knelt beside her, keeping my distance, and smiled. Hi, Janet. I'm Maria. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Can we talk? She nodded, her small fingers tightening around the rabbit. Kevin hovered nearby, his presence a silent threat, but I felt the Shadow Lady's hum steadying me. Sure, Janet whispered, her voice barely audible. I noticed her drawings scattered on the coffee table stick figures. 2 women, one with a glowing heart, the other with empty eyes. But there was a new detail. A shadowy figure in the background holding a book, its pages glowing faintly. My breath caught. Was she seeing the Shadow Lady too? As I asked Janet routine questions, her favorite games, her school routine, I watched for signs of distress. Her answers were rehearsed, too perfect as if coached. Daddy says I'm happy here, she said, But her eyes flicked to Carla, then to the floor. Miss Carla is nice. She knows my stories. Her voice wavered, and I caught the code in her words, the same one she'd used with Mrs. Patterson. She tells them wrong. I glanced at Carla, who shifted uncomfortably, her hands twisting in her lap. Kevin's smile tightened, and I felt the air shift a subtle pulse like a warning. Janet's been thriving. He said, his voice smooth as glass. Her mother's absence has been hard, but Carla's stepped in wonderfully. The lie was seamless, but I saw the cracks. Carla's tense shoulders, Janet's downcast eyes, the faint shimmer around her drawings, as if the shadow lady was marking the truth. I asked to see Janet's room, and Kevin led the way, his confidence unshaken. The room was a shrine to manipulation, new toys, pristine furniture, a stark contrast to the chaos he'd described in his reports about my parenting. But Janet's stuffed animals were arranged in an odd pattern on her bed, their letters spelling out HELP when viewed from the right angle. My heart surged. My daughter was fighting back in her own way, leaving clues only I could read. Janet's quite the artist, I said, picking up a drawing from her desk. It showed the glowing-hearted, real mommy, standing over a shattered mirror, the shadowy figure now clearer, her book, open to a page of flames. "What's this one about?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Janet's eyes met mine, and for a moment I swore she saw through Maria's facade to the mother beneath. "It's about the lady who fixes things," she said softly. "She's coming back." Kevin's laugh was sharp, dismissive. "Kids and their imaginations," he said, but his eyes lingered on the drawing, a flicker of unease breaking his mask. Over the next weeks, I conducted multiple home visits, each one a tightrope walk between professionalism and maternal instinct. I documented everything. Kevin's subtle manipulations, Carla's growing discomfort, Janet's coded messages. Her drawings became bolder, the shadow lady's figure more defined, her book now glowing with symbols I couldn't decipher. Each sketch felt like a message, not just from Janet, but from the mysterious force guiding me. The air in the house grew heavier with each visit, the walls humming with an energy that seemed to respond to my presence. I interviewed Carla alone one afternoon, catching her when Kevin was at the hospital. She sat stiffly in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, her eyes, my eyes, haunted. "Ms. Gonzalez, I just want what's best for Janet," she said, her voice trembling. "Kevin says I'm helping her heal." I leaned forward, my voice soft but firm, Maria's authority masking Jennifer's rage. "And do you believe him, Carla? Or do you feel like you're playing a role you didn't choose?" Her gaze faltered, and for a moment I saw the woman she'd been before, Kevin's scalpel, kind unsure, trapped. The air shimmered, and I felt the shadow lady's presence urging me to push. "I've seen cases like this before." I said my words careful, but pointed. "Men who reshape women to fit their fantasies. It's not too late to choose yourself." Carla's hand shook tea spilling onto the table. "You don't understand," she whispered. He's not just a surgeon. There's something else. He talks about a legacy, about permanence." Her words echoed the file I'd found, and the room seemed to darken, the hum growing louder. What kind of legacy, I asked, my heart racing. She glanced at the door, fear etched in her features. "I don't know, but he's obsessed with it. He says Janet's part of it, that she needs the right mother." Her voice broke, and I saw the truth. Carla wasn't a villain. She was a victim caught in Kevin's web, her identity stolen as surely as mine. Outside CPS, I built Maria's reputation with ruthless precision. I handled other custody cases, advocating for children with a passion that earned Clara's respect. "You're a natural, Gonzalez," she said, after I secured a safe placement for a boy escaping an abusive father. "You see through the lies." I smiled, hiding the irony. Every case was practice, sharpening my skills for the battle ahead. I studied Kevin's medical records, accessed through Dr. Okafor's underground network, uncovering surgical errors and inappropriate patient interactions, cracks in his perfect facade. One night, I visited Janet's school after hours drawn by an instinct I couldn't explain. The playground was empty, the swings swaying in the wind, their chains creaking like whispers. I found a new drawing tucked under Janet's desk, hidden as if meant for me. It showed the shadow lady standing beside Real Mommy, their hands joined flames rising around them. Below in Janet's careful handwriting were the words, "She's coming. Don't be scared." My heart swelled and the air crackled, the shadow lady's presence stronger than ever. I felt her hand on my shoulder, not physical, but real. Her whisper clear, "You're close." I tucked the drawing into my bag, a talisman of my daughter's faith and my own resolve. Kevin's legacy, whatever it was, wasn't just about replacing me. It was about controlling Janet, shaping her into something I couldn't yet understand. But I was Maria Gonzalez now, and I was building a case that would shatter his world. At the CPS office, I compiled my evidence recordings of Kevin's coercive tactics, Carla's hesitant confessions, Janet's coded drawings, and the medical records showing his misconduct. The shadow lady's presence grew with each piece, her hum a steady rhythm, guiding my work. One evening, as I reviewed the files, the office lights flickered and my computer screen glitched, revealing a single phrase. "The legacy is a lie." I froze, my breath catching. Was it the shadow lady or something deeper breaking through Kevin's digital fortress? I saved the message, adding it to my growing arsenal. Kevin thought he'd crafted the perfect plan, but he hadn't counted on Maria Gonzalez or the force awakening within me. The storm was gathering, and I was ready to unleash it. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension, its high ceilings amplifying every whisper into a shout. I sat at the CPS table as Maria Gonzalez, my tailored blazer, and steady gaze masking the storm raging inside me. Across the room, Kevin stood with his lawyer, his suit impeccable, his smile a weapon honed by years of manipulation. Carla sat behind him, her face my face pale, and strained her eyes, flickering with the same fear I'd seen during my home visits. Janet was absent, spared from this battle, but her presence filled every beat of my heart, her drawings and coded messages fueling the fire within me. The shadow lady's hum pulsed in my veins stronger now, as if she knew this was the moment we'd been building toward. Judge Morrison, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, called the hearing to order. "We're here to determine custody of Janet Walsh," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. The father, Dr. Kevin Walsh, alleges that the mother, Jennifer Walsh, is unfit due to mental instability and neglect. CPS Ms. Gonzalez. Your report, I stood my new voice resonant, carrying the authority I'd earned through months of pain and reinvention. Your Honor, as the assigned caseworker, I've conducted multiple home visits and interviews. My findings contradict Dr. Walsh's claims and point to a pattern of psychological manipulation and professional misconduct. My words were calm, precise, but inside the ember that had sparked months ago roared into a blaze. The air shimmered faintly, and I felt the shadow lady's presence, her glowing eyes, watching from the edges of my vision. Kevin's lawyer, a slick man named Gregory Tate, smirked. "Ms. Gonzalez, you're new to this jurisdiction. Are you sure you're not misinterpreting a complex family dynamic? Dr. Walsh is a respected surgeon, and his partner, Ms. Carla Evans, has provided stability for Janet." He slid a stack of documents across the table, forged therapy notes, fabricated police reports, emails supposedly from me, threatening to abandon Janet. Each page was a lie, but they were crafted with surgical precision designed to bury Jennifer Walsh forever. I didn't flinch. "I've reviewed the evidence, Mr. Tate." I said, my voice steady. "And I have concerns about its authenticity." May I present my findings? Judge Morrison nodded, her expression unreadable. I opened my briefcase, pulling out the flash drive containing Kevin's files, Jennifer original template, Carla version 2.0, Jennifer replacement protocol. But I held back, waiting for the right moment, guided by the Shadow Lady's whisper, patience. Let him unravel. Tate called Kevin to the stand, and he spun his tale with chilling ease. Jennifer was unstable. He said, his voice dripping with false regret. She neglected Janet, had erratic outbursts. I did everything to help her, but she disappeared 6 months ago. Carla stepped in to provide the love Janet needed. His eyes met mine, not recognizing Maria Gonzalez as the woman he'd tried to erase, but I saw a flicker of unease, as if he sensed something amiss. The air grew heavy, the courtroom lights flickering faintly, unnoticed by others, but clear to me. The Shadow Lady's presence intensified, her hum vibrating in my chest. I cross-examined Kevin. My questions sharp, but professional. Dr. Walsh, you claim Jennifer neglected Janet, yet school records show consistent attendance and no behavioral issues until recently. Can you explain the discrepancy? He faltered, his smile tightening. Children hide their pain, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pressed further, asking about Carla's role, her sudden appearance in Janet's life. Kevin's answers grew vague, and Carla's hands twisted in her lap, her gaze darting to the floor. The room seemed to pulse, the air charged with an unseen energy, as if the truth itself was fighting to break free. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Tate, overconfident, presented an email chain supposedly sent from my account, detailing my breakdown, and intent to abandon Janet. This is irrefutable proof of Jennifer Walsh's unfitness, he declared, handing the documents to the judge. I stood, my heart pounding, but my voice calm. Your Honor, I request a forensic analysis of these emails. CPS has evidence suggesting they were fabricated. Tate laughed, a sound that grated against the charged air. That's absurd, Ms. Gonzalez. These came from Jennifer Walsh's personal computer. But I was ready. I handed the judge a report from Dr. Okafor's underground network, detailing a forensic audit of Kevin's devices. The emails originated from Dr. Walsh's office computer, not Jennifer's. I said my words, cutting through Tate's bravado. Metadata shows they were sent during hours. Jennifer was documented at work or with Janet. Furthermore, we have files from Dr. Walsh's system that outline a deliberate plan to discredit his wife. The courtroom fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. I inserted the flash drive into the court's projector, and Kevin's files appeared on the screen. Jennifer original template, with photos of my face annotated like a blueprint. Carla version 2.0 detailing her surgical transformation, and Jennifer replacement protocol, a chilling timeline to erase me. Gasps rippled through the room, and Kevin's face drained of color, his mask crumbling. Your Honor. I continued, my voice steady, despite the fire in my chest. These files reveal a systematic effort to replace Jennifer Walsh with a surgically altered duplicate, Ms. Carla Evans, and to alienate Janet from her mother. This is not just a custody dispute. It's psychological abuse and medical fraud. Tate stammered, but before he could recover, Carla stood, her voice trembling, but clear. It's true, she said, tears streaming down her face. My face. Kevin made me into her. He said it was for Janet, for his legacy, but it was about control. I have recordings. She pulled a USB drive from her purse, her hands shaking, and handed it to the bailiff. The air shimmered, and I saw the Shadow Lady in the corner, her glowing eyes fixed on Carla, as if she'd guided this moment. The recordings played Kevin's voice, cold and calculating, Jennifer's weak. But you're perfect, Carla. You'll be the mother Janet deserves, the one who completes my legacy. Another clip detailed his plans to have me declared unfit to ensure I'd disappear for good. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and Judge Morrison's face hardened her gavel, slamming for order. Kevin lunged from the stand, his composure gone. "She's lying. They're all lying," he shouted, but his voice cracked, and the room seemed to darken, the lights flickering wildly. I felt the Shadow Lady's presence surge her hum, now a roar, as if she were channeling my rage into the very air. Tate tried to object, but Judge Morrison silenced him. "I've heard enough," she said. "Dr. Walsh, your credibility is in question. Ms. Gonzalez, do you have anything further?" This was it, the moment I'd burned for. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, the Shadow Lady's fire blazing within me. "Your Honor, there's one more truth you need to know." I paused, letting the silence stretch, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "I am Jennifer Walsh." The courtroom froze, a collective gasp sucking the air from the space. I removed my glasses, letting my true self shine through Maria's facade, my eyes meeting Kevin's, his face contorted in horror recognition dawning as he saw the woman he'd tried to erase. "No," he whispered, stumbling back. You're gone. I was never gone," I said, my voice carrying the weight of 6 months of pain, transformation, and power. "You tried to erase me, Kevin, but you only made me stronger. I became Maria Gonzalez to protect our daughter, to expose your lies. These files, these recordings, Janet's drawings, they all prove what you've done." I turned to the judge, my hands steady, as I presented Janet's latest drawing, Real Mommy, with a glowing heart standing over a shattered mirror, the Shadow Lady beside her. My daughter knew I'd come back, and I'm here to take her home. The air crackled, the lights flickering one final time, and I swore I saw the Shadow Lady smile, her form fading into the glow. Carla sobbed, her head bowed, and Kevin collapsed into his chair, his empire of lies crumbling. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "Dr. Walsh, you are under arrest for psychological abuse, medical fraud, and falsifying evidence. Custody of Janet Walsh is awarded to her mother, Jennifer Walsh, effective immediately." The gavel fell, and the room seemed to exhale, the tension breaking like a storm passing. I stood tall, no longer just Maria or Jennifer, but both a mother, a warrior, a storm unleashed. The Shadow Lady's hum softened her presence, lingering like a warm embrace, and I knew this was only the beginning of our victory. 3 months after the courtroom's thunder, I stood in our new backyard, a small patch of green far from the house where Kevin's lies had nearly erased me. The air was soft-scented with jasmine and possibility, and Janet's laughter rang out as she planted marigolds, her small hands patting soil with care. "Mommy, these are for you," she said, her eyes, my eyes, free of his shadow, sparkling with joy. I knelt beside her, my heart full, the ember within me, now a steady glow, no longer a storm but a hearth. We were Jennifer and Janet Walsh again, though Maria Gonzalez lived on in my work, her strength woven into every case I took at CPS. The transformation lingered: bronze skin, sharp cheekbones, a voice that commanded respect. But it was Janet's name for me, Mommy Maria, that felt like home. Her drawings no longer held hollow-eyed imposters, they showed us together. Hearts glowing, the Shadow Lady, a faint outline in the background. Her book closed, her work done. Kevin's empire had crumbled. His medical license was revoked, his practice shuttered, his legacy exposed as a delusion of control. He faced criminal charges, his name, a cautionary tale whispered in hospital corridors. Carla, freed from his grip, had left the city, her last letter to me, one of gratitude and apology, her path to healing her own. The Shadow Lady's hum was softer now, but I felt her presence in quiet moments, a guardian who'd guided me through the dark. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold, I tucked Janet into bed, her stuffed rabbit nestled close. Mommy, the Shadow Lady says you're the strongest. She whispered, her voice heavy with sleep. I smiled, brushing her hair, the air shimmering faintly around us. She helped us both be brave, I said, and Janet nodded, her dreams already carrying her away. I stepped outside the stars, bright above our new beginning. The Shadow Lady's form flickered one last time, her glowing eyes meeting mine, then faded into the night. I was no longer just Jennifer or Maria, but something more, a mother, a survivor, a woman forged in fire. The world felt alive, whispering of hope, and I knew we were safe. Our love, unbreakable, our future ours to shape.